Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Lisa Elvin Stoltare, and I am a genealogist and a passionate traveler. Over the last 4 years, I've been focusing this channel on a variety of genealogy subjects. Mostly, right now, we're trying to finish biographies of all of the king's daughters and all of the marriageable girls. There are in marriageable girls, there are about 262 of them, and les filles rois over 700. Now, in each one of those series, we have profiled an individual and really tried to get to know where she's from, what her life was about, any descendants, that sort of thing. And the object is to really honor these women who, in some ways, are lost to history. And that's the purpose of doing each one of them, because I think each one contributed to the magnificence that became New France. So let's begin. I ask you to subscribe, like, and if you want, you can become a member. Just have a look at there's an info in the notes, so check that out. And let's get on with the show. Today we celebrate episode 150 of Les Filles Mariées. We have come so far. We are looking at Madeleine Dubois, who is from a viewer request, and I was so happy to be able to explore Madeleine's life a little bit more. So, Madeleine was born in 1640 in La Rochelle in the parish of Saint Sauveur. Her parents were Isaac Dubois and Anne Richer. Saint Sauveur is a historic parish located near the old port in La Rochelle, France. It served a working class community, especially sailors and fishermen and merchants who lived and worked by the harbor. The parish has existed by or from the 11th century, but the church building we know today is mostly from the 1600s, which is when Madeleine would have been baptized there. The original church was actually destroyed in 1568 during the French Wars of Religion, when the conflict between the Catholics and the Protestants caused major damage in the city. It was rebuilt during that 17th century. La Rochelle, it was an important port in France, and it's many people who traveled to New France left from this city. Some Filles du Roi and Filles Mariées would have likely attended Saint-Sauveur before they sailed. So that makes it doubly interesting. So let's have a look at her journey to New France. So Madeleine would arrive sometime in 1661 in New France. And let's have a look at the man that she selected. The man that she selected and who selected her, his name was Michel Baugis, and he was born in 1639 in Les Sables d'Olonne in France. His parents were François Baugis and Denise Mercier. So you can see he's from les Pays de la Loire, and inside of that, it is part of the Vendée region. You can see it circled right there. And this is obviously the French Atlantic coast, and it's a seaside town, which you can clearly see. Les Sables d'Olonne actually means the sands of Olonne. The town itself began around 1218 when Savary de Montlion built a small fishing and salt trading port on the sandy coast. Over the century, the people of Les Sables lived by the sea, fishing, sailing, and building ships. Salt from their marshes was so valuable it was called white gold. By the early 1600s, the town had grown large enough to need its own parish church. The townspeople began building the Église Notre-Dame de Beauport, which means Our Lady of Safe Harbor. The name shows how important faith was to the sailors and their families. They prayed here before every voyage. The church was finished in the 1600s and built of that pale local stone with a tall bell tower that guided ships back to the shore. Today it's famous for those beaches and the Vendée Globe, a world-famous sailing race, but the old church still stands in the center of town just as it did 400 years ago, reminding everyone that this modern resort was once a humble fishing village built on faith and salt and the sea. Now, he would have an interesting journey to New France. He came as a newborn with his parents, and his father was enlisted in the Seigneurie of Robert Giffard of Beauport, and so obviously he was among the very earliest colonists and pioneers of New France. Now, Madeleine and Michel would get married on the 19th of October, 1661. Let's have a look at what happens next. As it turns out, Marie Madeleine was 4 months pregnant when she married Michel. The child she bore was that of Jean Royer, and she was also named Marie Madeleine. She would go on to marry Jacques Ménard de Laurier and would have 10 children, 8 of whom would leave descendants. So if in case you are connected to Marie Madeleine through this line of the Jacques Ménard, this is your link. Michel and Marie Madeleine would settle at Beauport, which of course is one of the oldest European settlements in North America. And Michel, of course, was one of the earliest residents because of the fact he came as a small child. So he had deep roots in the community that had been founded by Robert Giffard. And it's located east of Quebec City along the St. Lawrence River, and Beauport played a crucial role in the colony's agricultural development, with settlers growing wheat and raising livestock. During the 17th and 18th centuries, the community expanded and attracted craftsmen and farmers and laborers who contributed to the region's economic growth. The area was also significant in military history, particularly during the Battle of Beauport, a major engagement in the 7 Years' War, when French forces successfully repelled a British attack before that eventual Battle of the Plains of Abraham, where they lost. By the 19th century, Beauport transitioned from an agricultural hub to an industrial center known for its water-powered mills, its tanneries, and shipbuilding industry. It officially became a city in 1976, before finally merging with Quebec City in 2002, now forming one of its boroughs. Today, Beauport retains its historic charms with landmarks like l'Île d'Orléans, Montmorency Falls, and Maison Girardin, reflecting its rich past while serving as a vibrant residential and cultural area within Quebec City. So you can see how this is actually a view of Beauport, this one in the middle, taken from Île d'Orléans. So it's literally, that's kind of how it's positioned, if you will. And now in the 1666 census, we see Michel, we see Marguerite Dubois, Marie-Madeleine Baugis, which you notice that there's a question mark because it says fils, which means son, but it is a fille, and it isn't. She should have been named Marie-Madeleine Royer. We have Jean Baugis, notice the 7-year gap there, and Francois Baugis, who is the father of Michel, who came to New France so early on. In 1667, we have Francois, the patriarch, if you will, 80 years old. We have Michel, Madeleine, Marie, Jean, Marguerite, François Chauveau, who is kind of probably a servant. They have 5 beasts and 16 arpents à valeur. So that's about 12 or 13 acres of land. So you see that Marie is listed there as 6 years of age. And so that doesn't correspond with the Marie. Then we have Jean, who's 4 years old. That corresponds. We have Marguerite, who is just born. That wasn't on the 1666 census. They would go on to have 6 children. Jean would marry Marie-Thérèse Parent and would have 14 children, 10 of whom would leave descendants. Marguerite would marry Pierre Parent, her brother-in-law, and they would have 11 children, 7 of whom would leave descendants. Marianne would marry Pierre Choret, and they would have 7 children, all would leave descendants. Louise would pass away in infancy. Jeanne would marry François Langlois de Traversy, and they would have 11 children, 8 of whom left descendants. Michel would marry first Angélique Senard, and they would have one child who made it to adulthood. Then he married Marie Miville. They had two children. None, unfortunately, made it to adulthood. And then finally, Marguerite Perrier, with whom he had no children. In the 1681 census, we find Michel and Madeleine, both the same age, strangely enough. And then their children, Jean, Marguerite, Marianne or Anne, Jeanne, Michel. Now, Michel is spelled in the female way, but we know he's a man. There's 2 guns, 10 Baitacorn, or 10 horned animals, possibly goats, and 30 arpents valeurs. So, because he was from such old stock, I'm certain his father had left him that land. And so that's approximately 25 to 26 acres of land. And the final years of Michel and Marie-Madeleine would see them both live a nice long life. Michel would be the first to pass away at the age of 79. He and Marie-Madeleine had been married an astonishing 55 years at this point. Marie-Madeleine herself would pass away at, again, a remarkable age for a woman of that time of 81. And she would leave us a legacy of 149 descendants as of 1729. So Madeleine was in an interesting position, being pregnant when marrying and to another man. It seems likely to me that her fiancé would have known and would have wanted to kind of save her, if you will, and the fact that they kept with the daughter and the daughter stayed with them, and that tells me that there was a lot of transparency. And I think she was very brave to carry on, and she did what she needed to do. I really think Madeleine and her struggle to create a life for herself meant that she had to find someone who could help her, and they ended up helping both of themselves and establishing a life in Beauport and absolutely being very strong together. So in the end, her story is one of triumph and not necessarily someone who was a victim. And I salute her courage and her ability to keep going on and find solutions. And isn't that the mark of a strong woman? So we salute you, Madeleine. We think you are just an amazing part of New France's history, and her descendants must be very proud. And remember, there are 149 as of 1729. Please let me know if you are a descendant of this fabulous woman. And with that, I also want to say thank you to my patrons and supporters. Thank you, all of you, for supporting me these many, many years. Appreciate each and every one of you. And with that, I will see you on the next episode. Until then, au revoir.